McGriddle pancake sandwiches are getting a high-protein, gentle tummy glow-up with clean ingredients, including gluten-free oat flour pancakes with maple syrup and Greek yogurt, maple sausage ground turkey patties, a soft fold egg, and slice of cheese. It's a lightly sweetened, high-protein breakfast for busy mornings. Hello, my name is Nicole Bonilla, and if you love healthier recipes that taste amazing, then you are in the right place. Now you're welcome to jot down these ingredients as we go along, or you can click on the link that's in the video description below, and that will take you to the full recipe with all the details, including nutrition facts, ingredients and substitutions, and frequently asked questions. Now to make these really easy pancakes, we're going to start with our mixing bowl, and we're going to start with our wet ingredients. So to add protein and moisture, we're adding half a cup of plain Greek yogurt. Then we're going to add 1/3 cup of milk, and you can use any variety that you like. Then we'll add 2 tablespoons of maple syrup for some natural sweetness. Next, we're going to add 3 tablespoons of light olive oil, but you could also use avocado oil, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and then we'll just whisk this together till it's nice and smooth. So next we're going to add 2 eggs, and then we'll whisk again just until they're mixed in. Now there are lots of options for the flour combination for these pancakes, and I included a table on the recipe card that has all of their measurements. But my favorite combination is using oat flour with a little bit of gluten-free flour to give it a little bit more structure, as well as adding some protein powder to increase the protein, and it also adds flavor. So we're going to start with half a cup of oat flour, and you could certainly grind your own from old-fashioned oats or quick oats. And then I'm adding 1/4 cup of some gluten-free flour. You could also use all-purpose flour or just use all oat flour if you prefer. Now adding protein powder is optional. This is my favorite because it's organic, naturally sweetened, and it's nut-based, and we really like the flavor. So we're adding 1/4 cup of some protein powder, but again, the recipe card shows other options for omitting it. And then we're going to add 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Now to give these pancakes a little more structure, since we want to be able to use them as sandwiches, I'm going to add a little bit of psyllium husk. And this is also going to add some fiber, but you could omit it if you like, or you could even use some ground flaxseed instead. And 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then we'll just mix this together till well blended. And then we have this beautiful pancake batter. Now in its current consistency, this is perfect for getting some nice thinner pancakes, but we want to let this sit for about 10 minutes because that's going to give all the oat flour and that psyllium husk a chance to soak in all the moisture. But we could start making the pancakes right now at this consistency, and then we'll just have to add a little more milk to our batter as it goes along, so you can do whatever accommodates your time. But I'm going to go ahead and let this sit for 10 minutes, and then we'll adjust it if necessary. So I let my pancake batter sit for the last 10 minutes, and you can see that it has thickened up just a little bit. So I'm just going to add about 2 tablespoons of milk and stir that in. Now we can tell this is thinner, but it is still making some distinct little plops on top of our batter. So I'm going to add 2 more tablespoons, and I can already tell that's going to be just right. Much better. So it's still nice and thick, but when it plops, it spreads out and becomes even again on top. So now we can cook our pancakes. Now to cook the pancakes, you can use any pan that you like. I love using my Hex-Clad hybrid pan because it gives you the best of non-stick, stainless steel, and cast iron. So I'm just taking 1/4 cup measuring cup, and we'll just pour our batter right in the middle. And then we'll just wait till we start to see those bubbles starting to form before we flip our pancake. Now that we see some bubbles, we'll come in with a spatula, give it a flip, and we have this beautifully toasted pancake. Another thing I love about these Hex-Clad pans is that you can use metal utensils on them without scratching, in case any of you are very concerned that I used a metal spatula in my pan. Now, as soon as it's cooked on the bottom, we'll just transfer it to our board to cool, and then repeat for our remaining pancakes. Now, if you could use more healthy inspiration on a regular basis, I invite you to join my email list. All you have to do is click on the link in the video description below, and that is the best way for us to stay connected. And now we have this delicious stack of pancakes that we can set aside. Now to make these really easy sausage patties, we're going to start by combining our dry ingredients. So in a bowl, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of paprika, a teaspoon of garlic powder, a teaspoon of rosemary, a teaspoon of sage, a teaspoon of salt, and a few dashes of pepper. And I'll just give these a good mix, and then we'll drop in 1 pound of ground turkey. And then to make it extra juicy and flavorful, we're going to add a tablespoon of some Worcestershire sauce. And to give it that classic maple flavor, we're going to add just 1/8 teaspoon of some maple extract. And then we're just going to mix all this together. Next, we're going to form the patties. Now you could just take the spatula and divide it into 6 pieces, or I really like using my 1/3 cup scoop because it makes them really uniform in size. And then I'm going to use some parchment paper and place it right in the center. And then go ahead and fold it over, and then use a round plate. And the bottom of this plate is the perfect circle for a sausage patty. And then simply press it down. Now these are going to shrink as they cook, which is why I want to spread it about an inch larger than I want the final patty to be. Now depending on how large your pan is and how many you could cook at once, you could just smash a few that will fit on your pan, cook them, and then smash a few more and then put those on, or get out some more parchment paper and have them all smashed and ready to go before you start. So I've just brought my pan over a medium-high heat, and then I'm going to pour in a little bit of some light olive oil. Now once we put the patty on, it's going to start cooking very quickly, and that patty as it shrinks can start to kind of dome up in the middle. So if you'd like to keep it flat, which gives you color all around the surface of the patty, I recommend having like a flat dish or something ready to be able to set on top of the patty once we put it in. Now that I can tell our oil is nice and hot, I'm just going to take my patty on the paper, I'm going to lay it away from me, and then just lift the paper right off, and then just set my dish right on top. And then we're just going to let this cook for maybe about a minute, minute and a half until those sides start to turn a nice golden brown. While that's cooking, I'll go ahead and prep the next patty. I can tell we're starting to get some nice color around the sides of the patty. So I'm going to go ahead and lift up my glass, flip it over. Ooh, look at that. That is fantastic. Go ahead and put our glass back on, and then let that cook for maybe another 30 seconds to a minute. So after about 30 seconds, go ahead and lift off my jar, and we'll let that rest. Now I am going to scrape up a little bit of these cooked bits to the side of my pan. That's one of the wonderful things about HexClad is you can use metal utensils without scratching the surface. And I'll pour in a little bit more oil right here in the center, and repeat for our next patty. And now we have a very juicy and incredible smelling stack of turkey sausage patties. Now to make this really easy egg, we're going to start with 1 egg. And I just cracked it into my bowl and then gently stirred it with a whisk. And then I'm going to season it with about 2 pinches of salt and a little dash of pepper. And then it's ready to cook on our skillet. Now I have found that it works best to use a skillet that has a lid on it to be able to get the best results on this egg, because once we put it into this pan, it's going to cook very quickly, and being able to put the lid on top helps the top of the egg cook as quick as the bottom does. So I brought my pan just under a medium heat, and then I'm just going to drop in about a teaspoon of butter. I'll spread that around to make sure my pan is very evenly coated, and then we'll just pour in our egg. And then we'll very quickly tilt our pan to make sure the entire surface of the pan is coated with egg. And then I'm going to very quickly put on the lid, and then we'll let this cook for about 30 seconds. So after about 30 seconds, we can take off our lid, and I can tell that the top is set. So now I'm just going to come in with my spatula and run around the outside of the edge, just making sure that it's nice and loose underneath one edge, and fold it in half, and fold it in half again. And we have this very beautiful softly folded egg that's ready to go onto a sandwich. Well, now that we've made our sausage patties, our pancakes, and our folded eggs, we can assemble our healthy McGriddles. Now you can just do these plain, but I really like to spread on just a little bit of whipped cream cheese, but you could use any sauce that you like. Honey mustard, ketchup, mayonnaise. Then we'll add one of our patties, and a slice of cheddar cheese, and a softly folded egg. Then we'll take a second pancake, give it a little cream cheese love, put it right on top, and it is ready to enjoy. And I am so ready to enjoy it. That is gorgeous. That is incredible. As soon as you bite in, you get all those flavors that come together in the most delicious bite. There's a tiny bit of sweet coming in from the maple syrup in the pancakes, and then you get a little bit of that maple coming in from the meat, and then you get that yummy cheese and then that soft egg. That is seriously so delicious, and is something that will leave you feeling just as good even after you eat it. And these could easily be batch prepped and assembled ahead of time so that you can just pull them out on busy mornings. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me today in my kitchen. I've included a link to this full recipe, and it's in the video description below, and that will take you to my website, gentletummy.com. And I also invite you to like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I invite you to hang out with me again in my kitchen.